Hey, what's going on? My name is Lockie, and this is Coast Watch Football, the weekly podcast where we sit down here to have a chat about all things Australian football. And in today's episode, I'm going to break down my A-League men's team of the season so far. Of course, we've sort of just crossed the second half, like the halfway point of the season. We're into the second half now, roughly speaking. Of course, this season has been crazy, as we know, with COVID affecting the scheduling and everything. So, look, teams, of course, still have games in hand, as it's going to be that way until basically the last couple of weeks of this season. So, look, there's going to be a really, really busy April coming up as well for A-League teams, that's for sure, as we approach the latter stages of the season. And it's just going to get more and more exciting. It's been so close. It's been so hard to predict the whole way through. There are some gaps starting to show in the ladder, but still, anything can happen. Really, every team is still in it when you look across the ladder and the teams that have games in hand. Now, this is going to be an interesting one, talking about some of these players, and there might be some contrasting opinions. And as always, would love to get your guys' thoughts. So whether you're watching the podcast on YouTube or on the podcast platforms, you can engage and get involved in the conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe your team of the season so far, because there has been some fantastic individual performances in this A-League season that we have seen so far. And of course, if you are enjoying these episodes, if you want to show your support, the best way you can do that is to hit like if you're watching on YouTube, or leave a rating if you're listening on a podcast platform. It helps me out a whole ton. Of course, these episodes dropping every single Tuesday, and a bit more of like a casual time for me to sit down, and sometimes we're joined by some guests. Sometimes you guys get to send in your questions too, so it's a bit of a chill one, a chill piece of content that we put out every single week here from Coast Watch Football. But let's jump straight into it, and of course we're going in position order from defense to attack, and we're also going to be including a bench as well, so which is, I thought it would make things a little bit more interesting to see some of the players who maybe just missed out on sort of the starting 11. So for goalkeeper, for me, the goalkeeper that I've put in my team of the season so far is Jamie Young from Western United. The man has 8 clean sheets so far. And looking at the clean sheets alone, that's the stat that really sets him above. I mean, the next keeper below him has 4 clean sheets. There's a few keepers on 4 clean sheets. There hasn't really been many clean sheets at all across the A-League. There's been so many goals from so many sides. But Jamie Young and Western United have been doing such a good job of keeping clean sheets. And again, just want to reiterate, this is about the whole season. So it's not just about recent weeks. We saw recently that just in the past weekend, he gave away a poor back pass. He gave away a poor pass for Jerry Skatardis against Sydney FC, which ended up meaning they conceded that third goal. So look, he hasn't been perfect, Jamie Young, but in terms of his contribution to the team when it comes to clean sheets, he has made some stunning saves here and there. And just his leadership from the back too. I mean, he's such an experienced keeper, has been involved in the A-League season for a while now, more predominantly with Brisbane Roar for a number of years. But brought to West United, I still think it's just incredible how Brisbane let him go. I mean, it really was bizarre. Brisbane let a lot of their class players go, which was interesting. So, look, Western are capitalising on bringing in Jamie Young, a fantastic goalkeeper, and he's doing so well for them. 8 clean sheets so far for Jamie Young. We'll talk about who I've got on the bench in the goalkeeper spot towards the end of the episode. But when we come into the back line now, and the formation we're going for in this team of the season is I wanted to keep it reasonably balanced. I've gone for like 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, and then the 2 strikers. And it's sort of a similar looking bench as well. So for the back line, right back, this was actually when I was... this is a position... Some positions were quite easy to pick. This was a position I was tossing up with maybe 2 or 3 players, but I've gone for Javi Lopez from Adelaide United. If you look at Javi Lopez's stats after every week, the guy puts in such a mammoth effort every single week. His numbers for his duels, even his take-ons, his tackles, his pass accuracy, all these stats are always one of the highest, not just for Adelaide United, but across both sides whenever Adelaide are playing. And Javi Lopez always puts in a really solid shift and has even gotten himself on the score sheet this season, and really consistent as well, especially for one of the older players. You know, sometimes we see the older players in the alley can pick up injuries here and there. Javi Lopez has been fit all season, has been so consistent. And in an Adelaide backline, which has been chopping and changing, I mean, they've had so many injuries. When you look at, and recently they've been missing Nick Ansell, Mikael Jakobsen's been in and out, Jacob Tratt, George Timotheou. Javi Lopez has really had to lead that Adelaide backline from that right back position, and he's done such a fantastic job. Across the backline, this is the easiest one. This is maybe the play of the season so far. Do I want to say it? I think I will. Honestly, if you had to pick a player of the season so far, it might be this next guy. And you guys know what I'm talking about. It is Leo Lacroix. It is the big Swiss defender. He's settled into life in Australia so well and has been a massive, massive cog he's a massive cog in that Western United machine, defensive machine. Chipping in with goals too. I mean, you think in recent weeks. I mean, he even scored a double in Ballarat against Newcastle Jets a couple of weeks ago. Grabbed one a crucial goal against Melbourne City just last week. The guy's just bossing the A-League. And again, there was someone who commented on it, and I apologize if you're listening now and I've forgotten who said it, but it was a great call when someone said Leo Lacroix is the Virgil van Dijk of the A-League. And it's so true. He's just an absolute beast. He's bossing attackers, and look, hasn't really had a poor game all season. He's been so consistent, so solid, and what an addition to the A-League he has been this season. Alongside him in the centre-back positions. Now, this was another position that was interesting to see who was going to slot in. And look, I did want to sort of keep it balanced in terms of I didn't want to just include players, half the players from like one team. So I've sort of kept the rule to if I can keep it to maybe 3 or 4 players from each team, that is ideally what we want to do. But alongside Leo Lacroix in the centre-back position, I've gone for Kai Rolls. Kai Rolls from Central Coast Mariners, which may or may not be a controversial pick, but when you look across the whole season, especially for the first few months, Kai Rolls' impact in that Mariners squad was so massive. And week in, week out, especially those opening rounds, I was talking about him every single week. And the way he's grown, I can't think of a player in the past 5 years who has improved so much. And again, I just want to reiterate Kai Rolls. I mean, the fact that he was part of a side that was, conceding 8 goals, for the Mariners a few seasons ago, just on the absolutely on the end of it every single week. And he's a Socceroo now. I mean, he's been called up to the Socceroos now twice for the past 2 qualifying rounds, in January and March for the Socceroos qualifiers, and that just goes to show, how far he's come. He was before, one of the lower end, in terms of he was on the lower end of A-League central defenders a couple of years ago. A young player still developing. And look at what he's developed into now, and his ability to read the play, to get in with slide tackles, to time his tackles, and really be the leader in that back line. I mean, I know they've got Mark Birighitti playing behind them, but Kai Rolls is now the senior centre back. When you look that they've been running Jacob Farrell, Dan Hall alongside him, it's been Lewis Miller predominantly in that right back role. Kai Rolls is the man who has like the most caps. Most appearances for the Mariners in that back line. And in terms of what this Mariners side is, which is a very young, inexperienced side, Kai Rolls is putting in a massive shift. There's been some other fantastic central defenders, don't get me wrong, but in terms of a player who's been there week in, week out, so consistent, Kai Rolls, for me, has to be in there. And again, I'm trying to put my bias aside being a Mariners fan, but for me, Rollsy is in there alongside Leo Lacroix in the team of the season so far. In the left back position, some people might expect me to go for Jacob Farrell, me being the one of the biggest Jacob Farrell fans in Australia. I like to think so, at least. I think he's fantastic. But I haven't gone for Farrell at left back. I've gone for Adama Traore from Western Sydney Wanderers, which may or may not be an eyebrow-raising selection. But in terms of, again, when you look at West Sydney Wanderers and how inconsistent they've been this season, there's been some pretty poor play performances individually, especially in an attacking sense. But Adama Traore has started just about every single game for the West Sydney Wanderers this season, almost every game. But he's been so consistent. Again, we look at these players who have been consistent over, 15, 16, 17 games that some of these teams have played now this season. And Traore, week in, week out, does so much for his side. And even, he even contributes so much in an attacking sense, getting forward, helping out his winger, helping out, playing crosses into the box, but defensively more so than anything. And as well, on top of that, he's improved in terms of his discipline. You think back to last season when he was part of a Melbourne Victory side that finished bottom of the ladder, and I can't remember if he picked up a couple of red cards last season. He definitely had picked up at least one, but you do remember a couple of incidents where Adama Traore just let his temper get the better of him. And you can tell that he's really reeled that in this season. And he's been wearing the captain's armband lately. He's a player that has experience and I think has been a great addition to that West Sydney Wanderers side. So for me, Adama Traore, left back. Let's move into the midfield positions now. And again, this is where it gets really interesting. I've gone for a diamond midfield here because I did want to play an attacking midfielder and I've gone for a defensive midfielder and then one on the right, one on the left. For my defensive midfielder, now whether you want to classify him as defensive midfielder is probably debatable. I mean, he has played in a defensive midfield role at times this season. But I've gone for Connor Metcalf from Melbourne City. I think Metcalf has just stepped up his game once again this season after a fantastic year last year in the championship winning season for Melbourne City. A player who's just so silky on the ball and so well-rounded. He'll get back and he'll defend. He's tall and he's strong. He can muscle players off the ball. But he gets forward and not only chips in with assists, but chips in with goals. He's grabbed a few goals this season. And a player who is still so young and has so much potential. And obviously has secured that move to St. Paul come the end of the season, and well-deserved. And, of course, now a Socceroo. He's been called up the last couple of times as well, and hopefully he'll get his chance to get on the field in these upcoming qualifiers. I love Connor Metcalf. I think he's fantastic as a neutral, not a Melbourne City fan. When I'm watching players from other clubs, Connor Metcalf is one I always keep an eye on because he's so good on the ball, and I'm so excited to see where he can go throughout his career. And look, that defensive, again, going back to that defensive midfield position, do you classify him as a defensive midfielder? Again, it's O'Neill who's mainly playing that position for City, but when you look at the other players I've put in the lineup very shortly, yeah, it makes sense that Connor Metcalf is a more defensive-minded midfielder. So the Melbourne City man is in that position for me. Let's go to right mid now. So the right side of my diamond midfield, I've gone for a MacArthur FC player. And look, MacArthur have been up and down this season, but this guy has been so consistent. And again, we talk about that. The word's popping up, man. Consistency. Craig Noon. Again, maybe an interesting selection, one that maybe I haven't seen it as many people speak about. But I think a player who probably flows under the radar more so than he he deserves to get more recognition, is what I'm trying to say. Craig Noon is he's a very classy player, and his deliveries are 9 out of 10 right on the target, and plays in so many crosses too. He's the king of the crosses in the A-League. If you look at his cross stats across every game, he just loves whipping in the ball. Has adapted well to a different sort of position, playing more of like a right wing back sort of role. Where in Melbourne City last year, he was sort of playing up, really up high as one of the front three in a wide position, in that winger role. But playing a wing back, which obviously involves a bit more defensive work and playing compared to playing further up the pitch in a wing role of Melbourne City, he's done really, really well and knows when to get forward and chip in with the assist or the goal. He's got a fantastic goal a couple weeks back against Wanderers. Of course, the stunning goal, which for me, I'll say it again now, is the goal of the season. That noon goal against Central Coast Mariners is the goal of the season for me so far. Just an incredible strike. Fantastic technique, and on his day has the potential to be one of the best A-League players in the A-League. I think he is that good. It's a shame that he's playing in a side that has just been inconsistent. Injuries have affected the Bulls at times. De Silva's been in and out. De Villa's been in and out. Craig Noon has been so consistent. He's been really the star man for MacArthur SC this season. And if he continues to put in solid performances, MacArthur will finish top 6. It'll be challenging for them because there are so many teams pushing for the finals this season. But look, if Craig Noon gets up, there's no reason why Bulls won't be a top 6 side. On the other side of the diamond midfield, this is another one of those really easy selections for me. And I've just been so impressed by this player's performance this season, and it's Craig Goodwin. I've got Craig Goodwin in left midfield. He's chipped in with 7 goals so far this season for Adelaide United and a number of assists as well. And is just, once again, one of those players who has just stepped up this season. We already know how good Craig Goodwin is, but he's gone up another level for me. And his influence on the Adelaide United side is incredible. When you think of players who, I don't want to say carry the side because that's sort of got, I guess, negative connotations to it. He doesn't carry the side. He's a player that just provides so much threat and elevates the players around him. I mean, his ability to whip in the ball for Ibusuki for him to get goals or whether it's Moture through the middle. Craig Goodwin is just such a classy player. Again, similar to Craig Noon with their ability on the ball and 2 players with fantastic left feet. And just the threat that he provides, whether he's playing, left wing at times, he's even been asked to play in a left back role during patches of games. So a player who, again, I just love watching and so excited to see him get involved with the Socceroos more and more in the future. Of course, he's missing these upcoming qualifiers. He's been a COVID close contact, unfortunately, but Craig Goodwin, I think for me, if he keeps up the performances, if he keeps this upward trend going, he's honestly a chance for the Johnny Warren medal. I genuinely believe that. He's been that good. If he keeps grabbing some goals and assists, if he can get into double digits, both of those numbers, which I wouldn't be surprised if he does, he's absolutely in the race for the Johnny Warren medal. Let's shift along now to the centre attacking midfield position. And there was a few players I was tossing and umming and ahhing on in terms of who should fill this role. But I think this guy, when you look across the whole season, has been fantastic, especially for the first few rounds. Jake Brimmer from Melbourne Victory, I think has been probably their best player and their most consistent player, and really has revolutionized his game under Tony Popovic. I think Popovic is getting the best out of him. Playing in this number 10 position, and more of an advanced role where maybe you think back at Perth Glory, who was playing a bit deeper as just sort of a central midfielder, but he's been playing alongside the striker at Victory, and that freedom has really allowed him to flourish, and chipping in with assists with a couple goals to Jake Brimmer. I think his creativity and his ability on the ball has just been so key to Victory and to their success this season. Again, they're still battling in that top 6 positions, but especially in those early rounds, Victory looked just so dominant and were really the team to beat in those first couple of months. And was key to their FFA Cup run as well, Jake Brimmer, taking them all the way to the Cup final. So for me, centre attacking midfield has to be Jakey Brimmer. Time to talk about the forward positions now. We've gone for 2 strikers, and these are the 2 positions that were probably easiest to choose, and you can probably guess who they are already, even if you look at the goals tally. And the first one is Jamie McLaren, and 12 goals. All I'll say of Jamie McLaren, though, interestingly enough, he hasn't necessarily... It's quite a fascinating one. You look at him; he's got 12 goals so far, but he's not a player that you talk about, week in, week out in terms of being, oh man, like Jamie McLaren really starred in that game. There hasn't been many games where he's just absolutely, torn it up or been really had a massive impact. But that's Jamie McLaren, and that's his game. He shows up in the big moments to put the ball in the back of the net, and he's done it 12 times this season, whether it's in the penalty spot, whether it's late on in a game. He gets himself on the score sheet more often than not, and those 12 goals have helped Melbourne City to, as it stands right now from the time of this recording, Melbourne City currently sit top of the ladder. So Jamie McLaren, whether if he's been quiet for 85 minutes in a game, it doesn't matter. He'll chip in with a couple of goals. And we still have to consider him as one of the best strikers in the A-League. I mean, the goal tally doesn't lie. 12 goals is just massive from Jamie McLaren, who is well on his way to winning the Golden Boot for another year in the A-League men's competition. The other striker alongside him, another Newcastle Jets player. In fact, the only Newcastle Jets player we've got in this team of the season so far. It's Becca Mikkeldatzi from Newcastle Jets. Rival of my team, but a player, again, I have to say, I just love watching. I think really fun watching him too, because he's not a conventional striker. He's so fascinating the way he plays, the amount of movement the movements that he makes across games, as far as dropping back to the back line to collect the ball. He's just everywhere, so unpredictable. And a young player too, the Georgian. He's picked up 9 goals so far this season. And he's those goals have been important, hopefully, for Newcastle's sake. If they can get, him and Pena have had some good combinations. If they can chip in with some more goals and if other players can help out with some more goals, I mean, Newcastle could make a push for the top 6. But Becca Mikkeldatz has really starred for the Jets, and he had some really dominant displays, especially early on the season. I remember that Newcastle Jets Wellington Phoenix game, that 4-0 result for the Jets. Mikkeldatz was just unstoppable that game. So, look, it'll be interesting to see, whether he sticks around the A-League for a couple of years, or whether, a young player potentially could head back over to Europe and get some game time at a European club. But Mikkeldatzi's just been, for me, the Jets' best player this season, and the second best striker behind Jamie McLaren for me. He's been so involved. So just to recap the starting 11. The back 4, Jamie Young in goals, Yavi Lopez, Leo Lacroix, Kai Rolls, Adama Traore. That is my back line. In midfield, the diamond, we've got Connor Metcalf, Craig Noon, Craig Goodwin. There we go, 2 Craigs. Wow, I'm just realising that now. How about that? Jakey Brimmer in the attacking midfield position. And then the 2 strikers, we got Jamie McLaren and we got Becca Mikkeldatzi. Time to run through the bench now. And look, I've got sort of 2 players for each position, like two defenders, 2 midfielders, 2 strikers, and of course the 1 keeper. The backup keeper I've got Mark Birighitti from Central Coast Mariners. I think when you look at some of the saves that he's made this season have just been simply incredible. Just his athleticism and his reflexes is I think, arguably the best in the A-League. And as well, the crucial saves that he's made to keep Mariners in games. You think in recent weeks, he saved a point for the Mariners against Melbourne Victory a couple of weeks ago. And the penalty saves. He's made 3 penalty saves this season. His best one coming recently against Perth Glory just a week ago. That save to deny Bruno Fornaroli it was a fantastic penalty. It was low and hard from Bruno Fornaroli. And the single hand to get down and to have the strength in the hand to keep that penalty out. I mean, he's done it 3 times this season, and it's not a fluke. I mean, Birigidi is, and rightly so, many people are calling for him to be called up to the Socceroos. Hasn't happened just yet, but if he keeps this up, there's no doubt that it'll happen sooner rather than later. Mark Birigidi, my backup keeper. Shout outs to Joe Gauci. He's been fantastic. Philip Koto, I think, has been solid as well. Ollie Sale, again, Ollie Sale probably might be the keeper of the season if he didn't get injured. So he's been fantastic as well for Wellington Phoenix. For the 2 defenders that I've got on the bench, I've got 2 West United players, Tomoki Imai and Josh Risdon are my 2 bench defenders, both fantastic defenders. Josh Risdon, I was so close to putting in my starting 11, has been immense, and I'm surprised that he's not getting a Socceroos call-up at the moment. I just think he's been so consistent. As well, a player who's struggled with injuries in recent years is good to see him getting some consistent game time at West United, and has been wearing the captain's armband recently as well for West United. And of course, Tomoki Imai, his partnership with Lacroix has been massive. Another West United player I've got in the midfield position here, Neil Kilkenny. Again, one of these underrated players who I don't think gets the spotlight that he deserves. And it's because some of the other guys in the team are taking it, like Leo Lacroix or like Alexander Privic, who up top has been fantastic as well. But Neil Kilkenny is such a key cog to that West United midfield. And if you look at his positioning and the way he marshals the players all around him, and he's been so key to that defensive, the way that West United play in a defensive sense, their structure. They say it starts right from the front and goes all the way to the back, and Neil Kilkenny in the center of the pitch is so key to marshalling his troops. He's been superb this season for Western. The other central midfielder, I've put in another Central Coast Mariners player. I think Ollie Bozanic has just been superb once again for the Mariners. And when you look at the goals that he's chipped in with, that's gone a long way to helping the Mariners so far this season. And missed, the recent one against the Bulls, but if he can keep up his leadership, that of course he just consistency again. Another one of the players talk about consistency. For me, we look at now the top 2 now, and I think Matthew Leckie, I've thrown him in there, and again, one of those fascinating ones, because the first few rounds he really wasn't showing up at all. It was fascinating seeing the fact that he wasn't able to. The quality that we know he possesses, he wasn't really showing up in those early rounds. But recent weeks, he's been unstoppable. Missed the last couple of weeks through injury, but I think overall, when you look at his impact on the side and you compare it to Andrew Naboot, Marco Tilio, I think Matthew Leckie's just stepped up with some key goals and key times in recent weeks. And for me, deserves a spot in the bench, at least, for this team of the season. And for the man up top, I'm going Nick D'Agostino. I think D'Agostino's been fantastic, especially again in recent months. And has deserved it with a Socceroos call-up, man. I mean, just the performances that he's been putting in, scoring big-time goals, especially that goal in the Melbourne derby, you think, back in December. So Nick D'Agostino has to be in there as well. We'd love to hear your choices as well, so make sure to leave them in the comments. We'd love to hear what you guys think for the team of the season so far. But that is mine. Guys, thanks for checking it out. And I hope you guys have a good week. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.